Reading, Identity, and Reflection, a collaborative autoethnography on the science of reading by Jessica Alcantara, Kimberly Galvin, and Lauren Lords. Galvin. I still remember holding my first English picture book. The pages felt heavy, the words unfamiliar. That small moment began my lifelong journey of learning, teaching, and reflecting on reading. As a group of teachers and mothers, we wanted to understand how our personal experiences as readers shape the way we teach, through the lenses of the science of reading. Therefore, we concentrated on the following research questions. How do our personal experiences as educators shape our evolving pedagogical identities in relation to the science of reading through personal storytelling? How do our personal reading challenges shape how we support the reading challenges that our own students face in our classroom?
As a child, I was very imaginative and I loved to hear stories and even tell stories. I was excited to start school, but then I soon realized that reading was really difficult for me. I had trouble decoding, I had trouble spelling, but I had a story to tell. And I remember struggling throughout elementary school until I got to second grade and I had a wonderful teacher that introduced the Magic Tree House books to me. And I remembered my love of fantasy and fiction, and I could see myself in the character of Annie, and I loved being able to connect to the characters. And throughout school, I found myself wanting to be in community to continue reading. And throughout middle school and high school, we kind of formed our own little book clubs. And once again, I found myself connecting to the writings of Ellen Hopkins. She wrote in poetry, and now that I'm older and reflecting on it, I think I enjoyed it because it broke all the rules. It was different from any poems I had heard before, and it was raw and it was real, and it was easier to read about these taboo things that teenagers were experiencing than talk about them with the adults in our lives. And even now, I find that I gravitate to poetry. And even though I don't have time as a reader to delve into the books that I used to as a young adult, I find myself gravitating towards poetry on a daily basis and enjoying sharing that material with the people that I care about and resonate with me.
Personal reading story as an English language learner began at age 6. I just wanted to socialize with my peers and understand my teacher's directions. I wanted to be an independent learner. As I grew up, I developed a method of learning vocabulary words. I would make connections with similar words, store them in a little box, and make a mental visual for my memory. This helped me learn the English language in order to read. I continue to use and embed this method in my instruction. Being an English learner, reading in Spanish and English created a world of Spanglish that helped me now connect language and culture. Now, as a bilingual teacher and mother, I see firsthand how language is power.
Reading for me used to be an escape, and it was exciting when I was able to do it for fun. I can still remember the sounds of the summer, the splash of the pool, and the smell of the pages from the books that I would turn. It's very nostalgic, and I can remember the happiness I felt as a child reading. When it was an obligation, I struggled. Academic reading took my love for reading, especially in college, and made me despise picking up a book. I struggled with things like comprehension and academic reading, and the thought of reading would literally make me freeze. In the summer of 2013, I picked up a book again and learned to love reading once more. Now, as a teacher, I try to find strategies for my own students that help them to decode words, approach vocabulary in a positive light, and try to learn what the text is trying to say and helping them learn. As a student who only spoke one language, I never realized how complicated English could be. And then I became a teacher. I now notice things I took for granted, like understanding the different theirs and yours that confuse our students. I now approach my students with empathy and try to meet them where they are and help build them to where they need to be. Our research started with our main question: how do our personal reading challenges shape how we support the reading challenges our students face in our classroom? The science of reading is a research based practice that helps explain how students learn to read. You start with things like phonemic awareness, phonics, decoding, vocabulary, and comprehension. This helps us understand how words, sounds, and what the words mean come together to convey a message. But the research we did dives deeper than that and into our lived experiences through connections and culture. The science of reading may explain how students learn to read, but our experiences gave that science heart and soul in reading. We started in our research understanding that reading starts with language through sounds and symbols and the connections of sounds. Then we talked about how comprehension relies on vocabulary and explicit instruction. Then you have things like translanguaging, where students might use their native languages and English to develop a meaning of words and text. In our classrooms or personal lives, this might be known as Spanglish, but our students might think in one language and express it in another. This is where our group members still see their struggles in literacy and language today, but build empathy for their students and support them in ways that we may not have had. Did you know that many students who struggle with reading actually lose the desire to read between 5th and 8th grade? Like one group member of ours, the diminished love of reading occurs when reading becomes assessed and an obligation rather than for pleasure. Reading and comprehension have to pair well with meaningful engagement from our students. But when they are met with bad grades or reading is meant for a punishment, it then de incentivizes them from reading. If students encounter grades, assessments, lack of access to reading materials, or lack of examples from parents and teachers, they also can lose their love to read at a faster rate. Students who experience options and choice in reading and who can relate to the text they read are more likely to become lifelong learners. Like our group members, we prefer to experience choice and reading for fun rather than for grades. In looking through research and literature and also our own experiences, we realize that learning and reading requires motivation and craving connection to those like teachers and parents who teach us how to read and write. Parents who are not native to the United States might experience learning to read and write in different ways, and some may place more of a value on education because it means that their children might achieve success than in previous opportunities they had had. But if parents see deficits themselves, they may struggle to properly support their own children in reading and literacy. For example, one group member mentioned that their parents worked multiple jobs. Sometimes parents want to support children but physically cannot. Some cultures also don't require parents to support children in reading at home. This is where culture and education hit a paradox. If teachers don't understand this, they may not be able to bridge the gap between educational supports and supports at home.
Our collaborative moments actually began with our individual vignettes. We had to take the time to put together some narratives that shared our experiences of literacy and how we came to understand ourselves as readers, teachers, and then we also pulled the themes of being parents in literacy. Then, after we wrote our vignettes, we would leave questions to help guide the dialogue. Most of the time, we elaborated on our thinking through our collaborative team meetings where we discussed the threads that we could pull, the similarities, and even the divergent thinking that we had about literacy and our experiences. In our group discussions, we saw that our experiences mirror one another. We coded our vignettes, searched for patterns, and found four key themes. We talked about monolingual versus multilingual literacy, reading motivation, vocabulary challenges, and the parental involvement. We realized that multilingualism is often misunderstood as a barrier when it's actually an asset. Motivation thrives when student choice is available and when there is connection. Home literacy practices, even in different languages, can lay the foundation for a student's comprehension and literacy. One of the greatest themes that we talked about was our experiences with multilingualism. As teachers, we all have to work with students that might have different backgrounds in languages as us. We have Kimberly and I, who both speak Spanish. She speaks it primarily as her first language, and I've learned it as a secondary language. And we apply what we know when we are in the classroom, and we look at it as a way to have culturally responsive teaching. Lauren has done an amazing job of recognizing her limits as a monolingual speaker, and she is very empathetic and sympathetic when she plans for her students who maybe have different language backgrounds and abilities. The topic of reading motivation started when we were discussing our own experiences with reading. Lauren and I both prefer to read for leisure and for pleasure, whereas Kimberly, through her experiences, prefers to only read when she is looking for an answer or is following her curiosity. And we see that in our students as well, and we try to honor that by giving them more choices and to keep them more engaged. We also found vocabulary to be difficult for students. They are not always exposed to as many academic words or content-specific words, and as teachers, we find that we spend a lot of time discussing vocabulary and making sure that they are aware of it so we can build upon that to create a better sense of literacy comprehension. Throughout our vignettes, we realized that we all had varying levels of parental involvement when it came to literacy growing up. And as teachers, we see that when parents are more involved, we can see a child's self-confidence and their ability to grow and really flourish in the classroom when they have those practices at home and they transfer into school. Parenting was a big topic for us because each of us are mothers and we want our children to have positive experiences with literacy and support them to enjoy it and find pleasure and be able to be resourceful and work independently when it comes to literacy.
Our research led to the following implications for classroom teachers, educational leaders, and ideas for student support and programs. Teachers should gather information about students' family backgrounds to build empathy, cultural awareness, and mutual respect. In addition to, schools should provide accessible academic support for ELL families, as many have limited English proficiency. Schools should proactively offer academic supports and involve families in ways that meet their needs without judgment. Teachers should also receive more training in the science of reading, as some lack sufficient materials, preparation, and background knowledge to effectively address students' diverse reading challenges. Increasing training and support in the science of reading is essential for both current and future educators. As for educational leaders, it is important to develop a strong literacy instruction. Effective readers must decode, understand, apply, and critique texts. These abilities grow through high-quality teaching practices such as read-alouds, think-alouds, and inquiry-based assessments. Schools must ensure teachers have a solid understanding of the science of the reading and the resources needed to teach phonics and decoding effectively. Therefore, phonics programs must be carefully evaluated before implementation. Explicit, flexible phonics and phonemic awareness instruction is essential for reading development. One of the ways that we can support literacy is through technology. The Readable English program offers a customizable, technology-supported intervention that helps close reading gaps caused in undiagnosed early literacy deficiencies. Effective implementation of programs requires collaboration and integration across multiple content areas. One suggestion is to teach vocabulary through culturally relevant storytelling, which enhances engagement for multilingual learners and can be supported by specialists like speech pathologists. Building student agency and social emotional support strengthens reading engagement and achievement. These approaches promote motivation, deepen comprehension, and allow instruction to be tailored to diverse student needs. Our research reminded us that teaching reading is both scientific and human. As teachers, we bring our histories into the classroom, our triumphs and our challenges. By understanding the science of reading and our own identities, we can better support every learner. The case study shows that educators' own challenges with reading, such as comprehension difficulties, vocabulary struggles, language acquisition, or limited parental support, directly shape how they support students' reading needs. Through autoethnography, teachers recognized how their past experiences inform their classroom practices, increase their reading self-awareness, and foster empathy for students facing similar struggles. Using journaling, vignettes, and collaborative reflection, participants identified shared themes in their reading experiences and questioned preconceived ideas about reading. This process empowered them to better understand how their identities as readers intersect with teaching practices, motivating them to seek effective, culturally responsive approaches that support diverse learners and promote student confidence and engagement. Further research should expand this work across grade levels and teacher demographics to better understand how personal histories impact instructional effectiveness.